Hello and welcome again to Melka Facebook Live. I'm Marguerite Picard, one of the directors at Melka. My co-director Tricia Peters, as I think everyone probably knows by now, is in a different place from me at her home, and our co-founder Tina Sinclair is in Canada. Tonight we're going to talk about property settlements and the challenges surrounding that in the times of COVID. One of the questions that we're often asked here at Melka is for us to give people information when they're considering whether or not they should separate from their spouse. And that's a question that's becoming increasingly difficult for people now because they're worried about what the impact of the COVID restrictions and the changes to the marketplace means for division of assets. At Melka, we work with psychologists, collaborative lawyers, mediators, financial planners. In our circle are accountants and other people who have expertise in this area. But right now, it's really a game of crystal ball, and what people are needing is some practical advice about what they should do. Some of the ideas that people have come up with, that we've been involved with, have been to simply defer the idea of a separation, not to have the conversation with a spouse at this time, if that's possible and it's safe to do so. Another idea that people often don't understand is that when you reach a property settlement, you can reach a settlement and have a plan that is implemented or rolled out down the track. Now that's true long before COVID happened. So for example, you might say, we're going to sell an asset, but we're not going to sell it for a defined period, or we're not going to sell it until a particular event happens, which in this case might be a turnaround in the market. You, of course, have to be really specific about how you describe an event rather than a time, but you might say to each other, well, let's come back and review this in 6 or 12 months and see what the market looks like. So our tentative idea could be to sell an asset, but we may not make that decision right now. And I think it's very important for people who have already separated or are thinking about it to have some sort of a plan. Most people want some financial certainty. They want to develop some autonomy. They want to be able to plan for their post-separation life. They want to understand what their obligations and rights are about sharing money and income. So a plan can certainly be achieved. And it's one of the really great aspects, I think, of collaborative practice is that you are brainstorming a whole lot of creative ideas, and there was never a time when creativity was more important, I think, than now. It's really the mainstay of what we do here at Melka, working on teams with a lawyer for each person, a psychologist or communication coach, a financial planner and a child psychologist. And with the benefit of all of those people, we believe that we usually come up with the best ideas that are going to be possible for couples or families in any given situation. And we are currently working with people by Zoom now who are having these discussions between them, and we're still able to facilitate those conversations and agreements. One of the other things that comes up about money is how are you actually going to share income between now and when a separation happens. That's a particular challenge for lots of people right now because money has been reduced and everyone's still scrambling to work out what they can access from government. Employers are scrambling to understand what's going to be available for them to pay to employees. So it's a difficult time to be making big investment decisions. It's a difficult time for a lot of people to be working out how they're actually going to pay regular bills. And there was never a more important time for people to have conversations about that. If you've been able to have sensible conversations with your partner about money to date, then you can probably continue to do that. That's not true for many couples though, where one person has much better understanding about the finances or one person has been controlling of the finances. One person might feel they have no knowledge, therefore they're on the back foot when they start to have any conversation about money. If you need help trying to get on the same page about money, the reality of budgets and expenditure, financial planners are people who can help you. You can access them through Melka, and that can be in a mediation setting or an advice and a collaborative setting. I think there are important conversations that need to be had, and sometimes this is around the legal concept of spousal maintenance, where whether you're living in one house or two, When you marry or you're in a de facto relationship with another person, you have mutual obligations and rights to give each other financial support. And even if your marriage or relationship hasn't come to an end or that discussion hasn't been had, the law still imposes those obligations about sharing and making sure everybody has the financial support they need. So there's legal backing for anybody who needs that help, and there's legal obligations imposed on the person who's in a position to give that help. So we'd urge everybody to try to be sensible and think about those things, have whatever conversations you can between you, but if those conversations are not safe because there's a power balance, a power imbalance, a knowledge imbalance, or a confidence imbalance about money, please do contact us by the usual ways of phone or email, and we'll see what we can do to help. I think one of the reasons people can be really worried about resolving their property settlements is not just about the value of the money and the assets, but it's about the emotional implications and the long-term financial implications of property settlements. And they're things to think in mind right now. So normally a property settlement goes hand in glove with people living in two houses. Sometimes right now interim decisions are going to have to be made. If people need to separate for their own well-being, emotional safety, well-being of children, you can still go ahead and separate without coming to final property settlements, and sometimes for everybody's emotional health, that's going to be quite an important thing to do. For some people, the question of how you might fund a second property, whether it's rented or purchased, is not going to be a problem. For most ordinary everyday Australians, it is either a problem or a discussion that needs to be had about how you're going to resource that second household. If you need some mediated help about that, then you should reach out for it and understand that it is still available. So whilst your decisions around separation and property settlement might look different now, it doesn't mean they can't be made, and it doesn't mean there's no help out there, because there is. So as well as housing and income, we know that there are various short-term pressures here, and there are going to be some long-term pressures as well. A particular group who have concerns right now are people who are moving towards retirement and having to think about living on their superannuation. For normal people, or for people who aren't heading towards retirement, splitting superannuation is something that typically happens in property settlements these days. And the value of superannuation funds, the timing of moving superannuation around, of accessing it, whether it's pensions or whether it's lump sums, whether it's self-managed or otherwise, means a lot of people are faced with really, really difficult dilemmas. Reaching out to your existing financial planners, the accountants who might have been helping you with your fund, is a really important first step to be on the same page. But if in the end what you need is some facilitated discussion about the decisions, if you interpret the advice differently, or whether perhaps only one of you is getting the advice and relaying it to the other one, and you don't feel like there's equivalence there in those discussions, again, that's an opportunity for financial mediation, a collaborative approach to working out those discussions. And we urge you to have those, even though you may not fully resolve them at this stage, during the restrictions and the economic fallout of the COVID pandemic. Nobody has a magic and perfect answer, but if you're at least able to have conversations that allow you to think about timing and the steps, where you're going to access your information and what information you're going to access, those things are going to be incredibly important right now. We have had a number of people ask questions about spousal maintenance and child support. I think that I've said something enough about spousal maintenance already. About child support, obligations are as they always were. If your situation has changed and you have a private child support agreement, then this is a good time for a conversation, facilitated or otherwise. If your child support is auspiced or assessed by the Child Support Agency, then you're going to need to approach the agency if there need to be variations due to these economic circumstances. But the overriding message that anybody in dispute resolution is going to give you is to think about your children. Their expenses still need to be met, Maybe the expenses are greater than ever because of what's going on. Maybe they're reduced. It's going to be different in different households. But prioritising the expenses and thinking, this is not about money I'm giving or receiving, but this is about how my ex-partner, my co-parent and I are working out about how to actually support our children. And I think it's one of the things that sometimes gets lost in conversations about child support, because the language of the legislation talks about payers and payees, and the kids get lost in the middle of that a bit. And at a time like this, when there is communication from the child support agency, poor communication between parents, then thinking about what is the point of this whole exercise is really powerful, and that is to look after your children's expenses. And again, if you need help with it, mediators, parenting coordinators, Melca's services might be really valuable to you and will, like everything, be available. I think it's really important to note that it's always the situation in the view of the people who work on the teams here at Melca that we need to take an interdisciplinary or a multidisciplinary approach to separation. Nothing is in isolation. You don't just have a legal problem or an emotional issue or a financial crisis. You have all of those things in part mushed together in any separation. And so reaching out in that interdisciplinary way, not just seeing anything that's going on as simply a problem about money or conflict or law, is going to be really valuable. And so accessing that kind of interdisciplinary help is something that we would really urge people to do. So think about the advisors you are approaching, those who have contacts and are accustomed to working with other disciplines, other people who potentially are going to be most helpful to you right now. A couple of people have sent in really specific questions that we're simply not able to answer, and they are about such things as, should I sell my shares? Should I sell my property? Should I buy a property? Should I rent a property for now? And really, those questions can only be answered by any financial expert in the context of a whole understanding of somebody's asset pool. And we're sorry to disappoint on that front, and we're not trying to walk away from difficult questions, but it's just simply probably not responsible for us to try and answer those questions, but to urge you to contact your regular advisors or us if you need a referral. And one of the things that I think this brings up for a lot of couples is that one or the other of you may have had the strongest relationship with your professional advisors, whoever they happen to be, around finance, business and accounting. And so this might be a time when lots of people feel like they need some objective or independent advice for themselves. It's something to consider. We can assist with referrals, but of course so can your existing advisors do that for you. For some people, there's urgency around child support, spousal maintenance, property division, access to money and income. And if that is the case and you need urgent help, do be aware that the family court system is still running virtually, and that most lawyers who can give you that kind of assistance for urgent advice and urgent court applications are still going to be available to you. So make contact with your regular advisors, make contact with us if you would like to do that, and we can refer you to lawyers who can assist you with those urgent applications if that becomes necessary. Until we have another Facebook Live session, the whole team here at Melca wishes you well and extends our warmest good wishes that everyone should stay safe and stay healthy.